So if MGM sells to Apple, that means Apple will own Stargate. Interesting.
Which means that it could go on the Apple TV Plus.
I mean, of course, they're talking about other shows like Handmaid's Tale and Rocky and Mad Max, but who cares about those?
Oh. Stargate's where it's at.
Stargate's where it's at. What if Disney buys MGM? Then Disney really bought another part of my youth.
Disney already owns all of your youth. Welcome to My Hill to Die On, episode 11.
Everyone has things they are passionate about.
Things we want our friends to try and experience.
So we've convinced each other to try different things.
And we talk about these experiences to see if we can get just one more person
to join us on our hill to die on. Today we thought we would take a look at our favorite board games.
Now, before we get into our favorite board games, I think it's very important that we define what is a board game.
Okay. I might have one that pushes the boundaries.
Yeah, because I have a couple here that, depending on how we define it, I could easily slide into it's either a board game or it could be a card game.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's ask the question, how are we defining a board game?
I think a significant portion of the play has to be played on the table. That isn't to say that you can't have cards, but what's happening on the table has to be more than just moving your pawn across the board.
Okay, so here's my question. For example, what if there is a game that is basically you build the world based on cards, and the cards become the map and become the board, and it's modular that way? Would you consider that a board game?
Yes. I mean, I think I would. I'm not sure everyone else would.
Okay, good. Well, that clarifies a few things and straightens up some of my decisions. Good to know. All right, so I think the best way to do this is I think we should just each pick one,
mm-hmm.
and we just go through one by one, top five in no particular order, or do we want to go like, I'd say, let's give ourselves a little challenge.
Let's go 5. Start with 5.
Let's start with 5.
All right, let's start with number 5 then. Go ahead. Why don't you start then?
I will say, first thing, let's do Alchemists. Alchemists is a game where basically you are solving a logic puzzle. It is a worker placement game where you have a certain number of workers and a certain number of movements that you can do in a turn. And your goal is to basically solve what certain ingredients do, and you're basically making yourself into the greatest alchemist of the kingdom by publishing articles basically saying, yes, I claim that the crow's foot definitely gives you a green positive potion, and things like that.
Okay.
It's basically a logic puzzle that you use by combining different ingredients together until you figure out which ones do what.
So you're trying to solve a puzzle that's on a card or something?
Basically, it's a randomized puzzle that is done through a companion phone app.
Oh, okay.
That will randomize, and basically what you do is you put your 2 ingredients on like a little platform, and you'll bring your phone up, and it will actually scan which cards are on the platform, and then it will tell you the results of that combination. And so it's basically you are trying to solve and figure out what each of these things do.
Interesting.
Let's start with that one.
Mm-hmm.
I will actually say, my problem is I don't really have a good order of these because I like all of these, and it just depends on what day it is that one of these might become number 5, and one might be 4, and one might be 1 the next day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so.
Yeah, these are all favorites.
Yeah, these are all favorites of mine.
All right, I'm going to pick an interesting one. I picked this up here in Japan. I think I picked it up at our school's flea market.
Okay.
I think that's where I got it. Because I didn't get it at a store, so it must have been at our school's flea market. And it's called Zagaland, and it's a Ravensburger game. It's got Japanese on the cover, and the instructions were all in Japanese, so I did have a hard time finding English instructions, but I did end up finding them. But what it is, It is a form of memory game. There's a board that you lay out, and you put tree tokens, like pine tree tokens, throughout the board, and you move your piece throughout the board, flipping over the pine trees as you land on them, and then you memorize what's underneath. And there's a deck of cards stacked on the castle on the board, and when you find a tree that has the same mark as the card that's on the castle, you race yourself to the castle. Of course, doing that tells the opponent which tree it is, but you race yourself to the castle, and then you say, it is that tree over there, and you pick it up, and if it's that tree, you're good. If not, you have to go back to the beginning. So it's a form of memory. One of the interesting things, and I think this is the only thing I don't like about it, is if you're well into the game, and neither of you have found the card that's on the castle. I've only played with 2 players. You can go up to 6, which would seem interesting. That would probably be fast. But if neither of you have found the card that's in the castle, and you flip over like most of the trees, you can almost memorize the whole board. Mm-hmm. So when you race to the castle, you flip the card, or you say, yep, that's that. You win that card. You can almost win the next 4 cards in a row because you've seen most of the trees. So I wish there was kind of a little bit of a reset there where you had to get back somewhere. Maybe not all the way back to the beginning, but maybe like a midpoint, so that you're not just sitting right at the castle. Because I think I've won a few times because, I've memorized most of the board, and my daughters are out in the trees, and I'm at the castle just claiming cards. So I think it's a little unfair. So I kind of wish there was a way to reset me back to the middle or something after I win a card. And maybe there is. Maybe I'm not reading the rules right.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy it because it's kind of a memory game. And my daughters are pretty good at it because they have pretty good memories. So it's kind of a fun game to play.
Yes, Enchanted Forest.
Enchanted Forest?
It's called Enchanted Forest in English.
Oh, okay.
Enchanted Forest, originally released in 1981, re-implemented by being called Junior Saga Land.
One of the things I like about this game is that there's a little bit of strategy in your dice rolls, or how you play your dice rolls. Because, like, say you roll a 3 and a 5, you can move 8 spaces, or you can move 3 spaces back and 5 spaces forward. So there's a little bit of strategy in the dice rolls. So usually what I do is I just help my daughters, like, oh, yeah, you want to go here? Great, let's figure out your dice rolls to get you there. So there's a little bit of strategy, but at the same time, you don't have to do much strategy.
Yeah.
It's a fun game. All right, why don't you go ahead?
Oh, now that I'm thinking about this, I'm like battling and trying to pick them all. Anyway, the next one I'm going to pick. Let's do Seventh Continent next. The Seventh Continent. And this is interesting because this is one of my few games that's actually a single-player game.
Okay.
It is a single-player board game.
Oh, that's interesting.
How it works, basically, is you have several decks of cards, and you start by you are an adventurer who is exploring what is the seventh continent. And you're trying to solve some sort of mystery or break some sort of curse. There's always a reason. It is a single-player game, probably best played single-player in my opinion, but it can be played with multiple players. But basically what you are doing is you are exploring various parts of this island and then going forth from your initial island. It is basically a choose-your-own-adventure game with cards.
Yeah, because you're making the board as you play, huh?
You make the board as you play. You make decisions as you play. So sometimes it might be, if I want to go in this direction, I need to put down this many cards. And if I want to go in this direction, I have to have this skill. And you have to have explored enough of the islands to discover certain things and have different skills. It's a really interesting game, very deep. And it is a game where you can, in a single-player board game, you can lose. You can lose very easily. So it's all about how you manage how many cards you play, how you're using your cards and how you're using your skills. And some of it is things like if you discover certain things on a card, you can actually change out that card for a different card. So, for example, when you're looking at a card, if you see a specific symbol, it might mean, if you see the symbol, you change this card out for card 27B, which actually will expose like a new cave in that same landscape that you get to then explore.
There's a Chuck Norris card.
I believe that is a character. I don't have that if it does exist.
Oh, okay. I was wondering. It kind of looks a little fake. I wonder if somebody just made a card.
I'm sure somebody probably just made that card, but if it does exist, I don't have that.
Okay.
And I bought pretty much the full set of everything.
Yeah. It looks different than the other cards in the picture, so I think somebody made it up.
Yeah, it is a very deep game, a very fun game, but it is complicated, and it is also one of those games that will take you like 20, 30 hours. You basically can do a save state partway through and put your cards back in a very specific order and then come back to it.
Mm-hmm.
So I really like this game, but it is very unique and it is very difficult.
Yeah, it looks interesting. I like the idea of a single-player board game, actually. I haven't even thought of that.
Oh, there are plenty of them.
It does say playing time 5 to 1,000 minutes.
Well, you could die right away.
Yeah.
That's why it says 5. I really like the game, but it's a lot of fun.
All right. I have another one here. Now, I've not ever played the full version of this game, so I don't know what the adult version is like. I've only played the junior version, and that's Sequence. So I've played the kids version, and I like the kids version. I don't know how the rules change. I think the basic plot is the same. But even in the kids version, it's not bad. It's challenging. It's not easy, I wouldn't say. So basically, for kids version uses animals. The adult version, it looks like playing cards, the spaces.
Yeah.
Animals look fun to me, actually. I don't know why playing cards look really boring. But basically, it is a Connect 4 game where you're dealt cards, and you can only play on the spaces of the cards you're dealt. But as soon as you use one, you can discard the card and pick up a new card. So you're trying to Connect 4, but not only are you playing against your opponents, but you're playing against the cards that you collect. Well, you're trying to play with them, but they're not always giving you what you want. It's not terribly easy because you can have 3 cards in a row of animals and start playing on them and then never get that 4th card. And then the game goes for, you sit there for a while waiting for your card to come. Usually feels like an eternity. But you can win just as easily if my daughter plays the animal she likes the best and she all of a sudden gets 4 in a row and I'm like, what? What happened? I like this animal. This one's the cutest. I'm going to play here. And I'm like, how'd you get 4 in a row? So yeah, I do like the games where no matter how much strategy I put into it, my kids can still beat me. Those are kind of fun for me, I think. Because it's like, I'm going to try to play the game as it can be played, and then my kids still beat me. I like that kind of game.
Hey, it means that it's actually, luck-based, but...
Yeah, there is a little bit of luck, yes. Mm-hmm. It's disconcertingly luck-based. Right? Like, there are some strategy. Like, I can strategize and get 4 in a row. No, it's luck-based. I don't know what the full game is like, but the for kids version is quite fun.
Yeah.
I bet you the full game is more fun and maybe a little bit less luck-based.
Well, for my next one, I'm going to have to pick Scythe.
I have not yet played this one.
Have I told you about it?
I've heard about it and I've seen it. I've heard that it's good, but I've not played it yet.
All right. Let me tell you. Basically, it is alternate history with mechs, and you are trying to basically make your country the best. And that can be done through gaining resources and getting an engine built, or you could basically attack other people. You can do it through a whole multitude of ways. They also have a legacy version campaign called The Rise of Fenris, where things happen, and I'm not going to spoil it for anybody because it's very interesting. And part of the nice things about legacy games is the discovery of new things. So a legacy game, if you don't know, is where the board game actually will evolve each time you play it. where you'll either get new pieces or new cards, and a lot of times there will be a story that will progress along the game. So in this case, we actually got a lot of new things and new situations that forced us to change the way that we played. But it's a very fun game, even in the base level, where basically what it is there's a factory that all these different countries are fighting over, and this factory is where all of these mechs are built. And what's very interesting is each country has their mechs, and each country has them designed differently. So, for example, the Roosevelt Federation, their mechs basically look like they have giant scythe blades on them, whereas the Saxony, which is based on Germany, looks like basically you took a Panzer tank and just strapped legs on the bottom. Whereas the group for the Vikings actually looks like you have a longboat that has been given legs as well. So it's very thematic, it's very interesting, and there are lots of ways to win. Basically how you win is you have to get a certain number of stars, and you get those stars by doing various things. But at the end of each game, your points that you get are multiplied by your likability and how much the rest of the world likes you. So yes, you can become an awful dictator and get tons of points really easily and really early, but if you are not liked, it is going to net you like 0 points in the end.
And do you win by points even if you're the first to finish?
Yes, even if you are the first to finish, you win by points. But the thing is, if you are the first to finish, that means that you will have the most stars, and stars are always worth the most points. But there are other ways to get points. So, fun game. Highly recommend it.
Looks good. It looks like it has nice pieces.
Oh, the thing is that the pieces that you're probably looking at, are you looking at the plastic ones?
Some are wood. Some are those coins metal. That's what I was.
Oh yeah, the coins are metal. Here's the thing though. All those plastic pieces, those are the non-upgraded components. You can upgrade those components and get like metal mechs.
Oh, okay.
And things like that, and have really fancy pieces.
But even the plastic ones look pretty nice.
Oh yeah, the plastic ones are still really nice.
They're small and detailed, I guess.
Yeah.
There are wooden ones too, huh?
Those are your workers.
Oh, okay.
Those are the ones who like gather resources for you.
Okay.
Also, to be completely fair, I should mention that each faction has different special moves, basically. So, for example, the Roosevelt Union, the one that I was talking about earlier, the one that's basically Russia, it actually has the ability to choose the same action 2 times in a row. For example, you get a action board where you have to choose, like, I'm going to move, and then I'm going to bolster, and then I'm going to trade. The Roosevelts can keep on using the same one over and over again. They can just keep moving, or they can just keep bolstering, or they can keep trading, whereas everybody else has to change what type of action they do between each round. But that's their special move. Other people have special moves like, I get to cross through lakes, or if I scare off your workers, I don't take popularity punishment for that. Stuff like that. It's very interesting. All right. I would say let's go to your next one.
My next one actually is a game that I believe comes from you through my wife.
Oh, yes.
Because she came home saying, we need to buy this game after playing it at school in one of the clubs. And I'm going to pick the ocean version of it because that's the one we have.
Okay.
I think there is something special about the ocean version that we haven't even gotten into because we're just still playing the standard rules. We haven't moved into what makes the ocean version special. Because we do know, like if you flip the cards over, there are some other pictures. But we haven't played with those ones yet. We're still just playing the regular rules because it's good with the regular rules as it is.
Yeah.
But this is called Ocean Labyrinth. And this is a very tricky game. And again, I think this is a game you can overthink and still not get anywhere. You can't win with luck in this game. At least my daughters haven't been able to win with luck recently. My youngest one especially. She just has fun moving her person around. But yeah, you do have to. There is strategy in this one. You have to at least think. So Labyrinth is a game where the board continues to change. The board is basically built of tiles. and you move a row of tiles every turn. You can move either in the X and Y axis, but no matter what you're doing, you're moving a row of tiles. And the tiles are basically pieces of a path through the labyrinth, which is why it's called that. As you move tiles, you're trying to connect certain parts of the labyrinth and other parts then disconnect, but you're trying to get your character through the labyrinth to a specific spot on the board in your turn. And it changes every time, and your opponent doesn't know where you're going. So it is kind of fun, because you're sometimes trying to figure out where they're going, or I have been nice and nasty a few times when it's been easy for me to move, and moved the tiles in such a way to strand my opponent so that they will have to get themselves out of stranded before they get to their next place. I have done that a few times. It's quite nasty, I think. But I have made moves like that in the past. So I like this game because sometimes, especially when you can't reach where you're trying to go in one turn, I don't think I've worked out quite a great strategy for moving tiles in such a way that you can get there the next turn. I've tried a bunch of strategies, and sometimes some of them pan out well, but other times they don't. And I'm still working on my strategy for that. Where do you put yourself to get there the next turn? Because I've made a few mistakes, and it's taken me like 3 turns to get places, and that's really bad because then your opponent catches up pretty quickly. I need to play this game some more, but I've played it a bunch with my family, and it is fun.
Yeah, it is a fun game. It is, in my opinion, one of those really fun, light pick up and go kind of games. Mm-hmm. And so for playing with your family, I think that game is a great fit.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, because you can stop any time, too.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to finish. When I play with my wife, we do deal out the whole deck. But when my wife first showed me, she only dealt 3 cards out at a time. She said, okay, we're going to play these 3 cards. And actually, I think that's not a bad way to play. Why do you deal out the whole deck? Just deal out 3 cards and play the 3 cards, and whoever's the first to 3 cards is good.
Yeah.
And at the same time, like one time I played with my wife, and I just raced through all my cards. It just happened to be real easy for me. So then I just took 3 of her cards and played more, right? Like, who cares? We're having fun.
Yeah. And I think that's part of the thing is the main point of all games is that you have fun.
Yep. So I like Labyrinth. I'm playing the Ocean variant, although with the original Labyrinth rules.
Well, I think my next pick, this has been hard for me because I have a lot of games that I really want to talk about. I'm going to pick Everdell next.
Okay.
Everdell is a very interesting game because it is a worker placement game that also involves basically an animal kingdom. So each person who is playing has their race of and this can be anything from squirrels and rabbits and badgers and whatnot. And you are that. And your goal is to make your burrow, basically, which is your home square of cards that you're laying down, worth the most points out of everybody else. And so your burrow can gain things like you can get a school and a teacher. And then because you have that combo, it basically helps you get more points through that. Your cards that you lay down will give you more actions to do, and it is very much a game where you have to budget when and what kind of actions you are doing. Because you have a very limited number of actions you can do. And how the game works is actually when you are done with your full amount of actions, you will move into what is called the next season. And you only get 3, I think it's 3 seasons in the game. It's been a while since I played the game, but I really love this game. And each season that passes, you get to pull back all of your workers, so you get to use them again. And then you get some additional benefit. But if you're doing that first, that means your opponents are still in the previous season and still have more turns, and they'll still get that benefit when they go into the next season. So it's very much about planning out when you're going to pull back, what cards you're going to play, and how to optimize your hand and how to optimize your moves.
So it's very strategy-based, huh?
It's super strategy-based, but it is a lot of fun, and the pieces and the cards are just adorably cute.
Yeah, they look fun. It's a 3D board.
It is a 3D board. The tree, actually, that is the the season passing marker, but also where you have a lot of cards stored.
Mm-hmm.
And the pieces of this game are basically twigs, amber, stones, and what are berries.
Mm-hmm.
And you're basically using the combination of those things to get more cards and build more things and do things like that to make your burrow the best burrow. It is very strategy based, but it is an adorably cute setting that as your daughters get older, I think this would be a game that
Something they can enjoy. Mm-hmm.
I would think so, but again, it is a heavier strategy game.
Yeah, very, very neat.
The problem with all these games is they keep coming out with more and more expansions to these things.
Oh,
So, like, Everdell just released, like, another expansion that has more races and more cards, and you can get a mount now, so your characters can actually ride, like, a flying tortoise or whatever. And I know that's actually not what the mount actually is, but it's just they added so much, and I have not played the expansion yet, but I am very much looking forward to it. So yeah, Everdell, lots of fun, really nice setting, and theme, and I just enjoy that game.
all right. I've got a very interesting one for you now.
Okay.
My parents own this one, so I don't own it. I would love to, but even looking it up today, it's selling for 8 mon on Japanese Amazon and $299 on American Amazon. It is Stop Thief from 1979. And the best part of this game is the controller unit, which I'm sure is what makes this game $200, because this thing is ancient technology with it looks like a telephone receiver that we would have used when we were kids.
Yeah, I'm looking at it.
Just a massive thing. So, while looking this up today again, somebody has just recently, like 3 years ago, has made a Kickstarter to relaunch this game. And they don't make a scanner like this anymore. You now have an app on your phone that does it all for you. But the scanner is so much fun. It's so 70s. So what this game is, this is basically like Clue. Well, it is similar in some ways to Clue, except for the fact that the robber keeps moving around and committing more crimes. And what happens is the board has numbered spots on it, and the robber can only step on the numbered spots, but he can move north, south, east, and west and diagonally. So you push the crime button on the scanner, and then it makes a series of beeps, which tell you that a crime has been committed. It tells you what building it's in. And then at the beginning of each turn, everyone pushes, everyone pushes one of the buttons on the scanner. I forget which one. Oh, it's Clue. Everyone pushes the Clue button on the scanner. And then, every time you push the Clue button, the robber does something else, whether he walks or whether he commits another crime, whether he opens a door, whether he breaks a window, whether he rides the subway, whether he walks on the sidewalk. Like, all of those have different sounds. Mm-hmm. So you have to know what the sounds are, for one, but you also have to logically follow where he's going, right? If he breaks a window and goes outside, he might have gone left or right and you don't know. But if he commits a crime, walks, and then commits another crime, well, that's a pretty good hint of where he is. Because it does tell you which building he's in. Usually it could be one of two places at that point. If there's only one of that pattern on the board, then he's in either one of the two crime spots, right?
Yeah.
It's quite fun. You're basically listening to the crime scanner make noises and trying to find out where the guy is because of the noises. One of the things you can do is you can have the scanner replay all the sounds again, which is kind of a neat thing, because then you can hear from the beginning and try to follow, but then everyone else hears it too. So it's kind of funny. Oh, and even if you are right, you hit the arrest button, you type in where you think he is, even if you're right, he can get away. And when he gets away, he makes 5 moves, which is really rough, because then he's it does it all in quick succession too. So you're like, oh my goodness, he got away. Your stress is high. Okay, he's moving. Which way did he move? How many times did he move? Oh my goodness, where'd he go? So yeah, it's a fun game. It's not terribly hard, I think, but it's quite fun.
Well, I've never played or heard of this game, But again, yeah, I was not around to play the 70-something version of Stop Thief.
The 1979 version of Stop Thief.
Yeah.
The 2017 version looks interesting from the quick looks I've looked on the internet, but it's not for sale on Amazon right now. Like, they're all out of stock, and on the Stop Thief website, they're all out of stock too. So I don't know when that will come back, but it looks interesting, and I might just have to buy the new one because while the old one is classic, finding the old one is difficult. So
yeah. What I'm seeing right here is, yeah, you can buy it for $299.99.
Yeah, the one on Amazon.co.jp was 8 mon or $800 basically. It's like, wow, that's a lot of money. It takes 9-volt batteries, that thing. So that's also kind of fun too. Finding a 9-volt battery to stick in.
Yeah. Fun.
I'd get the 2017 version. Like, they say they have the original sounds and all, which is kind of fun. But yeah, even the original version is modern and not as cool as this crime scanner thingy. You gotta love the red LEDs that come up like an old clock on the little building location thing, the screen, the tiny screen. The really tiny 4 characters screen. It's great. And all the information is passed to you in those 4 characters, which is also kind of fun too, right? Like, how do they do that? But they do it, it works well.
Hey, it sounds interesting, but it also, I think it's the experience of having that old of a thingamabob.
Oh yeah. When I played it with my daughters this summer while we were staying at my parents', it was like, oh, that was so much fun. Look at this thing. It makes noises. So yes, the experience of the thingamabob is fun. In some ways, I think the 2017 version is going to lose that effect because you don't have this cool thing. But I'm sure it's still fun. But
yeah,
but you are losing something not having that cool thing.
All right, I think it's time for me to pick my last one. I'm gonna pick it. Terraforming Mars. This is a game where you are basically trying to terraform Mars, as per the title.
Doesn't go far off the mark, huh?
No. It says what it is on the tin. So basically, how you play this is each player takes the role of a corporation, and you want your corporation to be the one who has effectively been the best at terraforming Mars. You're all working together to terraform Mars, but you want to be the best one, the one who has basically owns the most land of this newly terraformed Mars. And so you do this by doing things like raising the temperature, adding oxygen to the environment, and adding water to the planet. So you get all these cards to play, and they can be everything from, I'm going to build a domed city, or I'm going to add in some animal life, or I'm going to send a ice-filled meteor hurtling towards Mars. So you do all these various things to basically get Mars to be more habitable, and you want to be the best one at doing so. I'm not great at this game, mostly because the other people who I play this with are a whole lot better at these type of like engine building games. But I really enjoy this game. If you've noticed, there's a pattern. I love fun themes in my board games.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is a really great theme. When you start the game, you pick which corporation you are. You are dealt, I think, 2 corporations to choose from. It's either 2 or 3. And you basically take a look and you go, okay, which corporation do I want to be? And some of them might be you just start with a certain number of money, and others might be you have less money, but you have a special ability. So it's very interesting. Again, this one has an expansion.
Is it called Phobos and Deimos? Sorry, the moons?
No, this one is actually called Prelude.
No.
You can actually build on their moons, by the way.
How are you expanding to different parts of the planet? How does that? Sorry.
Yeah. No, the expansion, though, is basically gives the game a kickstart, like where you have more stuff to get the ball rolling earlier, whereas the one struggle that people have had with terraforming Mars is to get the ball rolling, because once the ball is rolling, everything just gets built really quickly. But if you don't have the expansion, it can potentially start real slow. It just depends on what cards you draw, because you might draw some really expensive cards that you can't use because you can't afford to use them. But it's a very fun game. I like it. And yes, this is another heavy strategy game. So this one's ages 12 plus.
All right, I'm going to kind of pick two at the end here.
Oh, come on.
But they're the same thing. They're the same game. It's just they're two different versions of the game. I'm going to pick Catan and Catan Jr.
Okay.
Because I do like Catan Jr. Because I was like, oh, Catan being one of my favorite games is really good. How would you make a junior version of this game? Because a junior version of this game, there's so many rules. Like, how can you slim down the rules? And I think they did actually a pretty good job of slimming down the rules. I think the only confusing parts in Catan Jr. are trading of cards is still a little bit confusing. You can't trade with other players. That's a nice rule, because then there's no bartering and bickering.
But what if I really want sheep?
Yeah, well, there's no sheep in this game. It's, what is it, like molasses and swords and wood. Oh, there is sheep, sorry. Molasses, swords, wood, sheep, and gold. Trading is a little bit weird, because they've got like these docks where you can trade with the dock anytime, or you can trade with the bank. And then, so knowing when to trade with the dock and when to trade with the bank is the hardest thing my girls have had to learn. All the other things are easy enough. So I do really like how they slimmed the rules down to make a kid's version. And I especially like that you can build on every corner of the hex, because that drives me nuts in the adult game. It's like, wow, 2 spaces away. And then, of course, somebody plays on the exact opposite side of the hex, which means you can't build anywhere else. Doesn't that drive you nuts? So I do like that. In Catan Jr., you can build anywhere. Really nice. This is actually interesting, too, because it has a double-sided board. 3 and 4 players play on the board that's slightly larger, and if you flip the board over, you can play 2 players. I kind of like that.
Yeah.
It takes away all of the hex building, too. Yeah, sorry, I should have explained Catan a little better in general.
It's all right. Most people who know board games know how Catan plays.
Yeah. I do like Catan. I have downloaded a set of alternate rules for the adult game to play with my wife so that we could play 2-player. And it works most of the time. Catan is a game where the game board is shuffled every time you play, and you're building to gain materials and build up your cities. But also, where I always think, oh, I have this all figured out. I'm going to be placing my cities at these places in the board, and I will for sure beat my wife. And I love how I'm proven not wrong every time, but how many times I'm like, yeah, that didn't really work out, because the dice never roll what you want them to roll, right?
Yeah.
That has happened to me a few times. Like, oh, good, I'm on these great spots with high probability roll numbers. I'm sure to win. And then, yeah, I'm just falling flat on my face and like, I can't get there. So yeah, I like Catan for that, because, yeah, usually I think I've got it all figured out, and then no, it didn't work out because the dice rolls never went my way. So as we're recording this, it is just past the iPad 10th anniversary of the iPad's announcement. Not of it being on sale, but of its announcement. And I was watching the YouTube video again, and it is interesting watching Steve Jobs talk about the iPad. And did you watch that announcement? Where were you in that time?
10 years ago?
Yeah. Do you remember watching that keynote, or did you not? Were you not paying attention?
I was not paying attention at that time. Let's see, 10 years ago, January 2010, I was working at Starbucks and doing very little else with my life besides trying to get a job anywhere else. I enjoyed my time as a barista, but it was not the life that I wanted to continue living.
Well, I was working here then. I was pretty interested in this keynote, especially because it dealt with an iPad, or at least that it was heavily rumored. I think there was almost no doubt. that's what was coming out in this keynote. But the funny thing to me was we were looking for something like this at the school we teach at. We wanted technology that was cheaper that we could distribute to elementary kids.
Mm-hmm.
Because they didn't need the power of MacBooks at the time, right? I mean, we would buy MacBooks and they just didn't even need that power, and they were heavy and clunky, and we just wanted something that we could give to elementary kids, and there was nothing out there. So prior to this announcement, I think maybe even the summer prior or like November, like it was like fairly close to this announcement. Just a month or two prior, we had just purchased 30 netbooks. And
netbooks.
They were the worst. And even in the keynote, even in Steve Jobs' keynote, he makes fun of them and says, oh yeah, everybody thinks there's a space between the phone and the computer. And some people think it's netbooks. But netbooks were, Steve Jobs says netbooks were horrible. And he's right. They were horrible.
Oh, I know.
They're just cheap laptops. And if all you were doing was surfing on the web and doing email, and that's it, like if that's like, honestly, that's it, like nothing else. Yeah, they're bad. They're worse than Chromebooks, what we have now.
Yeah.
So yeah, these netbooks we got, and the problem with the netbooks we have is not only were they horrible computers, but they were also like the shipment, because we ordered them from America, they sent the wrong model or something. Like they shipped us the ones with the 3-hour batteries, and we wanted the ones with the 6-hour batteries because we wanted them to last all day. Like it was a headache in many ways. It was a headache because we got the wrong model. It was a headache because we needed to get Linux on them, and we were having a hard time getting Linux on them. It was a headache in many ways. And then, of course, they sat around in elementary classrooms not being used because they were still complex, because they're still laptops at the end of the day. And elementary doesn't really want laptops. They wanted something like an iPad, but we didn't know it at the time. And then Steve Jobs comes on stage and announces this iPad, and it's amazing. And we want it like the next day, but of course we can't buy them right away. Yeah, it was so frustrating in that respect because these netbooks were just horrible.
Yeah.
One of the times my brother came out to visit, and he is into Linux, and he actually helped us get Linux installed on all of them and made a master so that we could push Linux onto, I think it was Ubuntu at the time. He made a Clonezilla master so that we could get Linux installed on all of them very easily. But man, that made it easier, but they were still just horrible computers to deal with. And I'm glad we threw them away because it was painful in multiple ways. It was the best thing we could get for the teachers for what they wanted, but it was still not the best thing, let me tell you.
Mm-hmm. I get you.
3 months later in April, I waited in downtown Tokyo at a line to get an iPad. And I still have that iPad. That iPad is upstairs. So that iPad is not quite 10 years old, but almost pretty close, I guess. But yeah, I waited downtown Tokyo, and I decided to take the first train out to downtown Tokyo, and that was going to be okay. Because I'm sure people were going to line up before me, but I'm still going to take the first train out, and I ended up being second in line, actually. I just went to a generic electronics store. I didn't go to an Apple store.
Yeah.
Because we had lots of points with that store. Because it was the time, back then, there was no Amazon. So we would go downtown to buy stuff all the time. So we had tons of points on a card. So I bought this first iPad all in points. And so that's why I wanted to go to that store. And it worked. They let me buy it all in points. And I was second in line, but the guy in front of me, he had a flyer for a washing machine. So he arrived before me at like 6 a.m. to line up for a washing machine. But then everybody else behind me was in line for an iPad.
You know, priorities. Different priorities.
He was older. He was an elderly gentleman. But it was quite interesting. So, yep, I got the first iPad I could get, and we got it all with points.
I did not have any good iPad stories because most of the iPads that I've had in my life have been iPads that have been gifted to me after somebody else got a newer and fancier one. I have made do with a lot of not buying myself an iPad because I go, I have the computer and the phone. I don't need the middle device.
Yeah.
But I want the middle device. My wallet just says no.
Are you thirsty, Ryan?
I am. So today we are trying out a new drink. I have a refrigerator at my local market that has all of the new drinks, and some of them are very interesting and some of them are scary, to say the least. I think I chose one that was interesting and hopefully not scary.
Yeah, I think so. It's got potential to be good.
It's got potential to be good because it is a yogurt mango drink that has like these jello cubes in it that are supposed to taste like tapioca. Whether or not they actually do is a different question. But that is the main gist of this. It looks like it's got potential. It looks like it is maybe like mango juice with a little bit of yogurt in it. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious in what this is going to taste like.
You know, I was noticing that this is the drink with the highest fruit juice percentage we've ever had.
What do we...
This one has 10% fruit juice.
Oh, 10% fruit juice. See, and you doubted me. I'm just bringing in more fruit into our diet.
Well, it does say healthy on it in the middle there. Healthy, I don't know what the kanji is, but this is going to be a drink that is good for us. It is going to be much better for us than the Coca-Cola drinks we've been drinking, or Coca-Cola style drinks.
This is what I do for us. I bring in healthy drink.
Next week you're going to bring in Hokkaido milk, right?
Maybe not.
Maybe not that healthy, huh?
Maybe not that healthy. All right, so shall we give this a shot?
Ooh, smells good. Strong mango flavor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a good mango juice.
Yeah, it's a good mango juice. Oh. I got some of the cubes.
The cubes? I haven't had one yet. I don't taste much yogurt.
I think it's condensed at the bottom. I'm going to try to shake mine up a bit.
Oh, maybe.
I think the yogurt's in the cubes.
Well, the cubes are not bad.
Uh-huh.
That has been one of the interesting things to me. Japan has a lot of drinks with things inside.
Yeah, actually, on that note, the one that I like the most out of all of those, have you ever had the aloe drink?
Maybe. I think I've had something with an aloe drink.
Yeah, there's an aloe drink that is just delicious.
I think the first time I saw that was I bought a drink from a vending machine, and I didn't realize until after I bought it that it was a jelly drink, which is basically a drink with jelly things inside, semi-solid stuff. And it was shocking, but it wasn't bad. It just threw me for a loop. I was like, wait a minute, there's things in this drink. And I think in the end what I did was I just shook it enough to break up all the jelly so that it didn't throw me anymore. But I think, if I had been able to get over it, it would have been fine.
Yeah. So.
Yep, I think it's not bad.
I would say that was actually pretty good.
Yeah, I think so.
Basically just a mango drink that had what tasted like yogurt cubes to me.
Mm-hmm.
Which sounds interesting.
Yeah, that's what I think too. It sounds bad, but it's not bad.
No, it tasted like mango juice with like maybe a little bit extra consistency in the cubes, but tasted good.
I agree.
I would say that I would approve of this more than I would approve of, I don't know, like some sort of strawberry Coke or anything like that.
Strawberry Coke. Yes. Mm-hmm. Strawberry Coke was on the shelves. We're going to bypass that because we've had it, and it is not good, so we're not bringing it to the podcast.
No, it doesn't exist. Not in my heart.
Hopefully Coke will come up with another sample flavor for us to try, because Strawberry Coke did not do it.
Since last time I did my What's Ryan Been Playing corner, I did beat Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, which storyline was really good. I would say it's probably one of the better Star Wars storylines that's happened in a long time. And that's unfortunately setting a very low bar.
But it was still good to play, huh?
It was still very good to play. Very satisfying. I enjoyed it. It's always fun to play as a Jedi. And this was a really good storyline. Mm-hmm. Other than that, I played a little bit of Crash Bandicoot. They did a remastered version of that game, which is just a platforming game and kind of fun. I also have been playing Yakuza, which is a game where you play as a Yakuza. I know. So many times, the names say right on the box what it's going to be about. But this is actually a very fun game because it is a bunch of like super serious guys doing some absolutely crazy junk. It is still one of my favorite things to do is having these like really like tough looking Yakuza characters walking into a bar and just belting out some karaoke. So much fun. Mm-hmm. In addition to that, I also played a game called Untitled Goose Game.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes, this one interests me.
Yeah, this one is basically it's a puzzle game where you are a goose making an entire town's life miserable, being an awful, awful goose, doing things like stealing the gardener's hat and making a picnic out of things from his garden. Like going and basically like stealing a watermelon out of his garden so you can bring it to the picnic. And various things like that. One of the things that was actually really funny was like you can lock a woman in her garage or trip a small child and exchange his glasses with another pair of glasses.
So he can't see anymore?
Well, so he can't see anymore, and also some of the pairs of glasses you can pick are things like 70s sunglasses or like Groucho Marx glasses. Mm. So, you know, he can't see and he's wearing Groucho Marx glasses. Mm-mm-mm. But yeah, it's just a fun, quick little game that is just a whole lot of fun. And actually, there's one other game that I played, and it's called The Return of the Obra Dinn.
Okay.
And this one is actually very interesting because what it is you are a insurance inspector who goes to a ship called the Obra Dinn. Mm-hmm. And you are basically trying to figure out what happened. And you get a book, like a journal, and you get a watch. And the watch allows you to go up to a corpse and roll back to the time of its death. And so what happens is you roll back time and see the one instant surrounding the death of this person. And you get to walk around that scene and see what's happening. And through all of the scenes that you can find on this ship, you basically have to figure out not only who each of the people are, so you have like a listing of names and a listing of pictures, and so you have to attach the right name to the right person. And then you also have to figure out how each of them died, or if they didn't die, how they survived. And then the game ends with you having figured out everyone and submitting to the insurance company, basically saying, this is what happened to everyone. It was a very fun game. I honestly sat down last night and started playing it. And might have looked up at the clock and it was 2 a.m. because I got so entranced. No. I did finish the game because I was up that late. It's like Untitled Goose Game where it's like a quick experience. It's basically a 6-hour puzzle game. It is one boat and you are just trying to run around this boat finding how all 60 people on the boat died. I think it's 60. It might have been less. I don't know. But yeah, that was it. And some of them are not very clear because it might be something like, okay, there is a firing squad at one point. And you have to tell the book which one of the members of the firing squad was the one who actually killed the guy who was being executed.
How can you figure that out?
You look at the angle of the bullets.
Oh, okay.
So you're like walking around and going, okay, this bullet clearly missed the guy. This bullet clearly missed the guy. This one's going directly at his head.
You said you can pause time and go back?
Well, what happens is you go back to the instant that the person died.
Okay. And then you walk around that scene.
Yeah, like everything's frozen in time there.
Okay.
And so you're walking around that scene where everybody's like falling in midair and there's one where like this guy is like starting to fall down a set of stairs in one scene, and in the next one you see that he is like face planted at the bottom of the stairs. Actually, one that was very interesting was there was one scene where this guy dies because he's been stabbed in the back, and you actually have to go back like 4 scenes to find who was the one who actually stabbed him. Because there's like all these people coming in and out of this room, and if you go back 4 scenes, you can actually see which one actually stabbed him.
Interesting. So how do you go back further? Do you have to go back from another death? You can go back to him and see?
You can go back from another death, and you go back to that room.
Because he was basically bleeding out on the floor, so the killer's long gone.
Yeah, basically. So, it's stuff like that. It is a very interesting puzzle game that I found incredibly interesting, because it is basically you get a list of names and a bunch of pictures, and you just go around solving how everybody died.
That sounds fun.
And that's what Ryan's been playing. The media for this week, I decided to have Nate read a novella from one of my favorite authors. I really enjoy the books by Brandon Sanderson. I am a big fan of his writing. I love his characterizations, how he makes his worlds, how he has his magic systems, and so I really wanted Nate to get a chance to read some of his work, and because I care about people's time, I thought I would start him on a novella. I suggested reading The Emperor's Soul, which is a fantastic story by Brandon Sanderson that is, well, it may be the case that some of you listening may not have read The Emperor's Soul. Or if you have, it's been a long time since you have. If this is the case, I thought, let me just summarize this for you, just so you can help join in this conversation. If you are going to, however, listen to this as a replacement for the reading the book, you're doing yourself a great disservice. Don't do this to yourself. Just read the book. It is a fantastic story. Wan Shay Lu is a forger. She's probably one of the best in the world, and the story opens with her in prison. She'd been betrayed at the wrong time and was captured by the Rose Empire and was set to be executed. So instead of being executed, she was offered a challenge. The arbiters, people who were basically running the country, needed her help doing something that only she really was capable of: creating a soul forgery, to overwrite a soul. In this case, specifically the Emperor's soul. You see, Emperor Ashravan was attacked by assassins and had been gravely injured. His life was saved, but his mind was completely gone. So they needed a soul forgery to replace that missing mind. And Shay had 3 months in which she could do it. 3 months in which they had said that the Emperor would be in a time of mourning for his wife who had been murdered in that attack. Shay also knew that without a doubt, when or if she succeeded, the arbiters were definitely going to dispose of her once she had finished. So really, she had 3 months to not only finish this project, but also to escape. Thus, Shay was locked in a room where she set upon her task, researching everything about the Emperor, in order to write a convincing forgery of his soul. She was locked in this room through the means of another type of magic, blood sealing, which involves stamps, bloods, and some undead skeletal monsters that would seek her out if she ever left the room. I would like to take this moment to explain what a forger and what forgery is. A forger is one who is skilled in a vast array of types of forgeries, from the more mundane, like painting a copy of a picture, to the more magical. Forgery, in the sense that we're going to be talking about for this story, is usually referring to the magical kind. It's the process in which a forger will create a stamp, and using that stamp it will rewrite the history and essence of an object, or in some cases a person. It has to be a plausible or a probable or a possible history. Because of that, you have to know the history of a thing. You have to research. You have to have knowledge of a thing. You could not convince a wall it was Jell-O, because that seal would just not take. It was completely unbelievable. That wall was once made of Jell-O. However, you could convince a wall that it had a structural flaw, or that the mortar had been laid incorrectly. To do all this, you would need to know that history in order to know what you needed to change in that history to bring about that desired result. To this end, Shay at one point will turn a beat-up table into an ornate one that had been cared for, a wall into a well-painted mural, a broken window into stained glass. She did all this by rewriting their stories and histories, changing one part of them, and making them a better version of themselves. So, for Shay to make the Emperor's soul that she had been requested to do, she had to know everything about the man, or else the forgery would not take and the seal would just dissipate. So a large part of the story is Shay basically doing everything she can to research about the Emperor, his passions, his past, the way he became Emperor and why he became Emperor. And this was all so she could create a series of stamps that she would need to test out. And she would test them on an arbiter named Gautna, who knew the Emperor very well and was deeply involved in his life. And she would test these on Gautna because it would be something that would be believable, something that would be able to get a glimpse of whether or not they would actually work on the Emperor. So in addition to this research, the story was largely about Shay and Gautna talking about a great deal of everything. Forgery, remembering, the Emperor, a little bit of everything. And Shay reveals that not only did she go for her true theft of the scepter that she was caught for, but she also stole a painting before that theft. Gautna, through this experience, also experienced bits of the Emperor's life from the perspective of the Emperor, seeing how the Emperor saw him. During this time, the other arbiters do also come and see Shay, but all in an attempt to bribe her into creating a backdoor into the Emperor. The only arbiter who did not do this was Gautna. As she approached the end of her task, Shay set up a series of stamps in addition to the soul to aid her in escape, in addition to a forged letter. She drops that letter, which the contents lead some of the guards to take care of the blood sealer for her. She escapes when the floor collapses under a guard, and then she goes out the door when the blood seal fades away. So, she tests out the forged soul on the Emperor, and then begs that he live and be better than he was last time. And then she goes to make her escape. She finds Gautna, gives him the book, and retrieves her essence marks. They are 5 marks that overwrite her own soul and her own most precious possessions in her life. She then makes her escape by turning herself into a warrior, fighting those previously mentioned undead atrocities, and leaving the castle. She then gives a book to Gautna when she received the essence marks, and that book that she gave Gautna describes the soul that she created in a great amount of detail. The soul was written in a way to nudge him back into a path of introspection and change, to reflect on this attack and try to be a better version of himself, try to be better emperor for his people. And Gautna sees the beauty in it all, and with a great sadness burns the art that was that book for the sake of preventing anyone else from knowing that change was brought about by a forgery of the soul. I really enjoy this story. This is technically, many times this is called Elantris Book 2, even though it has nothing to do with a lot of the things that happen in Elantris.
Okay.
It happens in the same world, but the two don't affect each other. You don't need to know what happened in Elantris to know anything about this world. There are some subtle tie-ins, but nothing that really changes the story.
Okay. Yes, I liked this too. I don't read too many fantasy books, but this one was good. I liked especially the world it created. And I think there was a lot of interesting things about this world. One of the first ones that's interesting to me is the political structure and how many layers of society there are, right? That's an interesting thing. There are obviously rich and poor here, but there are many more layers than that, especially when it comes to the depths, I guess, in some ways. Like, the arbiters are definitely on top, only under the emperor. But then there's the arbiters' forgers, who are beneath the arbiters, but like are an accepted part of society still somehow?
Well, they're accepted because one of the things they talk about is the group that the arbiters and the emperor belong to are called the historical faction or the remembering faction or something along those lines.
So it's almost necessary in that cast to have forgers that can bring back that history, right?
Yeah, that is why they kept them around. They also do say that the only type of forgery that is technically illegal in the Rose Empire is the forging of one's soul. All the other forms of forgery in the magical sense are legal except for that one.
Yes, the structure of the political parties, because there apparently are a number of political parties, and then this historical remembering party is currently the ones in charge.
Yeah, one of their big opponents is the Glory faction, which was the ones who they suspected was responsible for the assassination attempt.
Yep, so, sorry, back to the other layers. So the Arbiters, Forgers, and then Shay is beneath them. But, in many ways, she is caught. So you said the only forgery that's illegal is the forgery of the soul. But she's caught and she's despised, but more because she has forged a painting that they consider sacred, right?
Well, it's basically as if somebody broke into the Louvre and put their own version of the Mona Lisa up.
Yeah.
Or what they thought was her own version of the Mona Lisa up.
Which is interesting because that brings the death penalty. Yeah, I mean, they're pretty against forgery of this kind in some ways.
Well, I say the Mona Lisa. I guess a better parallel in this case might be breaking into British Parliament and stealing the scepter.
Yeah.
That is the representation of the Queen's power in Parliament. So basically it'd be the equivalent of breaking into the British Parliament and stealing that scepter.
So yes, she is despised because of that. But then even beneath her is the Blood Sealers, which you mentioned. And the Blood Sealers seem to be despised, but then used by the Arbiters to keep Shay in her room. So that's quite interesting, huh? Like, we don't really like these guys, but they're a necessary evil to the plot we're trying to commit here.
Yeah, it is very interesting because you have, at one point, talk about the races, and so there's the Grands, which are what all the Arbiters and the Emperor are, and then they have, like, the Strikers, which are all of basically their guards, and then they have all of these other races, including the group that Shay is part of, and so it is very much a racially segregated society. Whereas there is one race that seems to be ruling everything, and every other race is subject to that race. One of the things that I find incredibly interesting about this entire thing is forgery and that magic system. Because one of the things that I really love about Sanderson's style is his magic systems are all very well defined. They are so well defined that it's almost done to a scientific level. If you do X, then Y will inevitably happen. So I find the whole idea of forgery incredibly interesting because it is taking the history of a thing and making it basically the best version of itself it can be. As if you have a wide set of branching paths and you basically just say, instead of going down this path, we're going to say that we're going to have a stamp that says to the table that instead of going down this path, you went down this path. And that change is what can change a thing into being a rugged table, into being a beautifully taken care of table, between being a broken window and being a stained glass beautiful piece of art.
I think what's also interesting too is that it's very consistent from rewriting the history for a broken table all the way to rewriting the history of the Emperor. It's very consistent in how it works. And that's why it's believable when it doesn't, because you see, oh, yep, they explained how it worked, and it's not working here. She tried to stamp the window to be clear, and that didn't work because she didn't understand that the window was stained glass to begin with. So when she learned that, she's like, oh, that's why that stamp didn't work. So it's very consistent throughout the thing. And I think that it's neat to see that. And that had to be worked out to be consistent all the way from the table all the way up to the Emperor. That's kind of neat.
Yeah.
One of the other things that make this book pretty good is the characters. There aren't that many characters, but they're very well defined.
Yeah, let's talk about those characters.
Of the major characters, the smallest, but definitely not the least interesting, is probably Frava. She might be the most cookie cutter, unfortunately, but it's a necessary cookie cutter. She needs to be the evil of the Arbiters, and she definitely plays that role well. Even still, she's the evilest of them, But she seems to fairly well represent all of them, right? I mean, it's not... The others are similar, maybe not quite to the same extent, but she's definitely the one pushing the buttons.
And to be completely fair, we are only really seeing the perspective from what Shay sees.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so it could very well be that she has some real motivations for acting and doing the ways that she does, that she might be looking out for something, but we don't see it.
Mm-hmm. That's true, yeah. Mm-hmm. But it does seem like, I mean, well, from a lot of her actions, she is looking out for herself.
Oh, she is very much looking out for herself, though. Yeah, she is very much a self-serving politician, serving the needs of the one more than the needs of the country.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, she was the one that first introduced the idea of we need to use Shay to rebuild the soul of the emperor. I mean, even that is completely self-serving because they want to stay in power.
Yeah.
Now, it might also be best for the empire to have Ashravan still remain in power. That could very well be true. I'm sure she's doing it for her own selfish interest so that she remains an arbiter.
Of course.
And so that another faction doesn't take over.
And Shay calls them out on it later.
Mm-hmm.
She actually mentions this to Gautna, where she says that the other arbiters all are doing this for the sake of keeping themselves in power.
Mm-hmm.
But Gautna, she mentions, is the only one that's not the case, that he just wants Ashravan back.
Yeah, that is an interesting thing. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you're right. Frava is there to basically go out for her own gains.
Mm-hmm.
She ends up trying to use Shay and get her to create the Emperor's Soul, while also trying to basically get it all done so that she's the one who comes out on top. Mm-hmm. More than the Emperor coming out on top, more than the Empire coming out on top, more than any of the other arbiters coming out on top, she had to be the one to come out on top.
Yes, and she is the first to ask for the back door, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about Shay a bit. I think one of the interesting things I liked about her was her level of skepticism. And there's a lot of things that hint this direction, but I do kind of like reading about someone who is really good at what they do. Mm-hmm. And this is just one more hint in that direction that, yeah, she's really good at reading people's souls. She can see the underlying reason for a lot of the things that are acted upon her, right? She understands the very first time it's hinted at that Frava is taking her journal to be read by someone else. Like, that's her first thought. She doesn't believe a single word that Frava is taking it to be copied.
That's partially because she also probably has done a lot of research into Frava, because the original theft was a theft from Frava.
Mm-hmm, right.
But that being said, she also could tell from scene 1 when Frava talks to her about the job, she can tell that, no, Frava's full of it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's interesting. I mean, she proves this over and over again, especially in how she reads people throughout the story, that she can pick up a lot. She picks up a lot of what's going on in people's heads and their desires behind their words. But that's represented throughout the story.
Yeah. I think that's the thing, is it comes down to the fact that her set of skills is reading people and understanding how people work. One of the ways that she describes it is very interesting, that all human beings want to exert control over their circumstances. And the big change of society was when we decided to put up walls to protect us from the wind. We then shifted our control from needing to control the wind to needing to control the people who have built that wall for us. Mm-hmm. So it is all about how do we control other people. It's a very cynical, but it is also a very people-watching outlook on the world. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the other thing was forgery. One of the big things that she talks about forgery is the fact that how she views the ideal version of forgery is incredibly interesting to me. Because she always talks about how the ideal of forgery is not to make one thing something that it's not. It is not to change something. It is to make something the greatest version of itself. I have a really interesting way to put it. It is as if the stamps that she is doing is picking a point in time and saying, instead of going down this path, we're going to say that at this point in your life, you chose the year of cleanliness for your theme, and you became a very beautiful table.
And how could it refuse?
And how could it refuse? It wanted to be that table. Honestly, it is taking the things and making them the best version of themselves that they can be. It's a very beautiful and a very optimistic way of looking at it. That is the character tension that I feel, is she is very cynical almost about how humans work. Very much to the point where you look at how she deals with people and she expects people to be taking advantage of each other. She expects people to be like trying to pull one over on each other. But her ideal is that everything that she does to create the best version of itself. Many times a lie so believable and so perfect that they will say this is either better than the original or it's got to be the original. So that is an interesting tension.
All the way till her work on Ashravan, right? She takes this to the degree where she's read through all of Ashravan's work, compiled all she has, and can see through his work that he doesn't quite like what he's become.
Yeah.
And then decides to twist is a strong word. A positive version of twist his soul to be what he wants to be, or what he wants to return to anyway. So she does kind of change his soul in the process of forging it. She tries to make him more upright towards his ideals of when he first came to power.
Well, I see where you're going with that. I would say that instead of necessarily twisting him and making him that way, I would say that she nudges him in this direction.
Oh, yeah. Is it kind of more like reminding, maybe?
It is a reminding of who he used to be. How I read that and how I view it is, instead of forcing down a path, it is as if you've ever hit like rock bottom and then you hear a wonderful sermon or you hear a speaker or you read a book that just resonates. She is basically putting the resonating words in prior to him finding them. She is saying, go back to your journals, go back and reflect on your life, because this event is such a big one that you need to reflect on this. You need to think about who you are and who you want to be.
Right, and I think that's kind of why Gautana is amazed too, because she is able to nudge him this way and it still be completely believable because of the ordeal he has purported to have gone through, right, of losing his wife.
And I think it's also the fact that because it is believable also, because if she had tried to force it, if she had tried to say, you will change, it would not have stuck. It would have made it unnatural, and that stamp wouldn't have taken. I think that's the key there, is because for a stamp to work, it has to be believable. It has to be something that would be within the realm of possibility for that thing to want to, or that thing to be. You couldn't stamp me to suddenly believe that I am a 12-foot tall basketball player.
But maybe a violinist, if you stamp enough history that that's the school you went to. Possibly.
Yeah.
I mean, that might be hard, but it's possible.
That might be hard, but yes. Something like that. Something that is more believable. Something that could have been. But even a violinist, for me, might be extreme. It would be more believable if it was something like that instead of working in Japan, you got offered a job in Korea. Or instead of working at a public school back in the States, you immediately got your teaching degree and went in for your PhD. Those are things that are more believable. Those are things that are within the realm of something that I could potentially see myself deciding to do. And I think that's the key, is it had to be something that Ashravan could have himself decided to do. And all she did was nudge him in one direction, the same way a slight twist in the wind might nudge a sail in a direction.
You mean a butterfly flapping and having hurricanes in the Atlantic?
Yes, yes, sure. Although this might be somebody inserting a robotic butterfly in this one.
I did like the relationship that Shay had with Gautna in this book, and it's very interesting. They have a lot of conversations, and I think that one of the things that makes it really neat, especially, is the fact that she learned early on that she needed to be authentic with Gautna. There was no way that she could really successfully lie to him, and if she did, she realized that she would lose all credibility, and that she needed to have credibility with Gautna. So the only way to talk to him is to be honest.
Yeah, she had said that the only way that she could have gotten him on her side at all was that she had to be truthful. She had to be genuine. She had to be honest. And I think that worked very well. Because if nothing else, in addition to getting him on her side, it also allowed the reader to really get into not only Shay, but also Gautna's minds and understand who they are, because we were exposed to who they were being at their most honest.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I'm not sure he ever got on her side, because I think, again, they talk about how she burned the painting. I kind of like that because in many ways, she wasn't necessarily going for his approval, but going for his respect. And I think she gets that at the end, at the very end especially. Maybe not in the middle, but she definitely gets it at the very end, as she finally lands his respect as an artist, which is kind of what she's trying to impart to him in some ways. And it finally does land at the very end. But especially early on, she wasn't going for his acceptance. But she definitely lands respect at the very end.
Yeah. Whereas I would also say that I still think that she does get him on her side, because if nothing else, how I viewed their relationship at the very end is exactly how she said that she was going to add into her final seal. Mm. So she has her fifth essence seal, which was her mode of escape. If she ever said to herself, this isn't a life I want to live anymore, she was going to add him as a kindly grandfather who basically helped guide her life. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the thing. That's why I can say I think that he was actually on her side, was because their relationship wasn't co-equal partners. It wasn't anything like that. He was basically the grandfather figure who may not always agree with what you're doing, but still accepts you. Mm-hmm. That sort of feel, where the grandfather who might be a little judgy at you, but still accepts you. That's at least how I read it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, and I think his authenticity, it strikes everybody. And I think that's why we learn, at the end, the twist that Frava was trying to get him out. And it's probably because he's authentic, because he smells the rat. And then he speaks up when he does. A person like that, as the arbiter, is not what Frava wants. She doesn't want somebody, spelling out the rat that she's trying to sell. She wants to sneak by. So she was trying to get him out toward the end.
Yeah, and I think the other part of him that is such a wonderful part of his character is he, like Shay, sees the good that is possible. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the thing that actually annoys a lot of people about him, is he will have basically I used the word judgy earlier, but it is where he will look at somebody and see what they're capable of and look sad because he thinks that they're not living up to their potential. Mm-hmm. Which is why Ashravan actually had viewed him as like one of the lowest members of his court throughout most of the time, because he had pushed Ashravan into being the emperor and then had basically seemed so sad when Ashravan wasn't living up to the emperor that he had planned to be. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think that's part of his character that I just find so appealing. The two main characters are Shay and Gautna, but for me, Gautna's honesty, that is what draws me to him. Whereas for Shay, it's how street smarts kind of feel, how cynical how she feels, but also how capable she is.
Right. Yeah.
I think that's what draws me to her.
These things are all great. The world is great. The characters are great. We've obviously gone through that. But I think, to me, the thing that really ties it all together is the tensions in this book. And I think there are a few tensions that draw you in and play with your head a bit. Especially this first one, where you're trying to figure out... So the first one here I have is Shay's love of forgery versus the arbiters who view her work as an abomination. And so you, as the reader, are trying to figure out, well, whose side are we really on here? Is Shay's work an abomination like the arbiters are saying? Or is Shay's passion for what she does that we keep reading about rubbing off on us so that we think that that is also a good thing? And I love that tension there. And it's not, to me anyway, it didn't seem easy to solve at first. What are we supposed to feel? Especially because, it is a forgery. Even the term forgery is carrying negative connotations. So, what are we supposed to feel? Are we supposed to be on her side? And in the end, I think we are supposed to feel that it is that what she is doing is definitely a work of art. Whereas probably not all forgers are. But she was definitely trained by some of the best people we learn early on. So she is definitely on a different level than most forgers. So that's kind of interesting. I liked that tension there.
Yeah, I did like that tension. I actually did not have that feeling of tension as much in my reading. Maybe because I've read this story many times before. But also, for me, it is the fact that I always come back to the fact of how she views forgery and it being basically the enabling of making it the best version of itself that it could have been.
Right. So in some ways, I think, her version of forgery is different than other people's.
Yeah.
So it's potentially easier for us to sympathize with her than it would be if there was another forger.
That being said, it is also very possible that the other view of forgery is basically how the rest of the world views it, and how she is describing it is how she in her culture have been raised to view it. Yeah,
she's hanging out with the masters, so if she's hanging out with the masters, they're definitely have a different view of forgery than the assembly line forgers that are making the pots that are in the castle, right?
Exactly.
All right, and I think the tension that I identified most with is Shay's internal tension between wanting to escape and wanting to complete the project. And I really liked that tension because I often am somebody also who wants to see the project completed perfectly. So for her to run to the emperor's room and stamp him during her escape attempt, I totally identified with that. Oh, yeah. Of course. You want to see it work. You want to see it complete all the way through. So I kind of loved that. She knew she had to escape, but she still did have to finish. And how is that all going to work together? Because she knows they're watching over her shoulder, so they know how close she is to finishing. So, I found that quite interesting.
Yeah, I will definitely agree with that tension. That tension is one that I know that it is the difficulty of wanting so badly to get the project done, to accomplish this goal of creation, this goal of accomplishing something, and everything else, no matter how important it is in real life, seems to fade into secondary. That is a tension and a real life tension that I think I can really identify with too. And I like reading about it in this circumstance as well.
Yep, so I think it was a good book. I am very happy you brought it to the table for us to read. I think that worked out very well.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that you liked it. If you like this, then maybe I can get you started on some of his epic fantasy next. Maybe you start you off small with maybe only one of his 2,000 page books.
2,000-page books. Oof.
I'm over exaggerating a bit.
Okay, good. Phew.
That's actually not a bad thought.
Mm-hmm.
If I do say so myself.
Our school's website is the best, Ryan.
You're right, our school's website is the best. Unfortunately, we can't have everybody experience the best. Oh, snap.
Did you spell it?
I spilled something else.
Uh-oh.
I actually found the bottle of strawberry Coke that I thought I had emptied, and apparently I did not.
Oh, oops.
So,
You okay?
I'm fine. I'm a little upset because some other things are not. My, Blu-ray, my 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray of Your Name was sitting down there.
Oh, yeah.
Things that I don't want ruined. Because I really love that movie. The end result, it seems that everything is safe, except for one thing that ended up getting slightly ruined.
Doused?
Yeah, but it's the back cover. The thing that says basically, like, this is on this disc, this is on this disc, this is on this disc.
Mm-hmm.
The things that nobody really actually cares about. The actual box set seems to be safe and dry.
Good.
Now I have a bunch of strawberry Coke smelling DVDs.